It's showtime. Look who we have today. We have Joe, who has the most amazing hashtag, Baldmothertucker. Is that right?
Yeah,
And
yes, that's right.
I was just, I actually thought it meant what it means, but it's actually got your name in there, right? Your last name is
Yes,
Tucker. So
yeah.
it's clever. It's like very clever with the duality. I love that. And Joe's in England. Where are you in England, Joe?
I am on the outskirts of Bristol, southwest.
Joe has a very posh accent. This is how posh English people talk. I'm from England, but I've been here for 30 years and I've got an American wife and I'm from the north, so different. Joe's got the posh, speaks like the queen or the past queen.
If she drove a tractor.
Joe,
Yeah.
this is how the way you talk, your accent is how most Americans I've come across think all English people speak, like with a
Really?
cup of tea and like real posh. So you've got the more posher side, so that's really cool.
I'd say fairly neutral with a slight Somerset twang on certain words.
Yes. So I'm very happy to have you here, Joe. Joe, in case you don't know who she is, Joe makes a tremendous amount of content. Joe is amazing. We're going to be dropping in videos and pictures, and you'll see it's unbelievable what she can do to any wig. It blows my mind. We're not here to talk about product. I always say we are here to ease the difficult journey of loss, and that our topics are deep. We want to get to hear the stories, but just to tell you like what you do with even the machine made wigs, okay, which oh my god, you can do anything with styling. It's just and then you speed up these videos. It's phenomenal. And before I'm going to pass it over to Joe, Joe is also with the amount of content she makes, she also has a full-time job. She's also a full-time single mum or mom for Americans with three daughters. How do you do it?
I don't sleep a great deal. I'm just good at spinning plates. I think that's all it is. I'm good at spinning plates. You become incredibly efficient, I think, when you're a parent because you have to be. I run a relatively tight ship, I think, although I'm sat here in the tidiest spot. There's absolute chaos around me, but obviously you can't see that. Yeah, you just do what needs to get done and get on with it. Most people say I'm like a duck. Like ducks, they look pretty chill on the top of the water, and then underneath their legs are going like, ah! I think that's like the perfect description.
Yeah, ducks. Ducks, yeah, I agree with that. We recently fostered 10 ducks for a short period of time.
Ah.
Very cute, but yes, they can be very messy. Definitely, definitely. Tell us, so I'd love to know a bit more about your journey
Okay.
throughout, like when, because you wear hair, you don't wear hair, you rock different colors, you're very open. Were you always open about hair loss?
I lost my hair 5.5 years ago now, actually, and I lost it in 2 weeks. So I found a patch on the side of my head. My youngest daughter was probably, I don't 11 months or so, and I had just gone back to work. It was in the run up to Christmas. It's a stressy time of year anyway. My body was just doing all kinds of weird things. I think my hormones were all over the place. And I found this patch and I felt physically quite run down. And during my second pregnancy with my second daughter, I was anemic. And I had actually had a couple of patches while I was anemic, and I was given iron tablets and everything cleared up and everything was fine. And so I did wonder if it was the same type of thing. And so I didn't feel panicked. I just casually booked myself into the doctor's, and he said, "Oh, it's alopecia areata. Here's a leaflet for you, and book yourself in to have some blood tests done," which I did. And he said, "There's no hurry. Please don't feel that you need to make yourself a priority. Just do it." And then within the 2 weeks, so we had Christmas in between and New Year, And then my appointment was with him to go and go over my blood test results. And when I went back for the results, I was completely bald at that point. I basically wore a bobble hat into the appointment and took it off in front of him. um, his face was a picture.
I'd had my third daughter, and she was about 11 months, and I felt like I'd been run over, like I felt pretty rubbish. I'd just gone back to work. My body was just hormones, everything was just happening. And I found a patch on the side of my head that was like a completely bald patch, a circular one, like behind my ear. And I didn't panic because when I was pregnant with my second daughter, I was anemic during the pregnancy. And I did actually lose a little bit of hair during the pregnancy. And because I was anemic, I felt really run down at that point. But I had some kind of medicine, everything got better and everything grew back. So it was fine. So I didn't panic, but I went to the doctors and I said, this has happened. And he said, okay, we'll get some blood tests for you. And it was literally just before Christmas. I specifically remember him saying to me, you are not a priority. No need to panic. Just don't squeeze yourself in. Just go and have an appointment when they can fit you in. I did that. And actually, they could see me straight away anyway. I went and had my blood tests done. And then we had the Christmas break, so Christmas and New Year. And then I had an appointment to go back and see him in the new year after Christmas. And in that time frame, which was roughly 2 weeks, all of my hair had fallen out, absolutely everything. And so I went back to see him in a bobble hat because I hadn't bought a wig yet. And yeah, I sat there, took it off, and his face was just like, oh my God. Because all I had left was just a few crazy old man, wiry bits of hair. The rest had just completely gone. And I think I just ugly cried in his face, really. I didn't really know, what was happening, what was wrong. I thought it was something really serious. I'd be in the shower and I just would pull the shampoo through my hair and a clump would come out, like an actual thick, like rat's tail of hair. It was just and then I could see the hole on my scalp where the hair was, but I couldn't feel it. It wasn't painful. It was just the weirdest experience. I tried to stop brushing my hair because every day my hairbrush was full, completely full of hair. I was just shedding on everything. It was just coming away. I tried to stop washing it. Like I used to wash it every day. I tried to not wash it every day, try and go every other or something, just to try and minimize the amount of tinkering with it. And I just felt that if I could draw a line at this point, I can deal with it. And if it didn't keep going, I just kept saying, it's completely out of your control. And the lack of control is the panic. And so I kept saying, oh, if it stops now, I can manage that control and I can manage where I am. And then it would go again. And then I'd be like, if it stops now, I can manage. I'll wear a jaunty scarf for a few weeks. It didn't stop. And I think that was the worst part of it. I always say now to people that kind of talk to me about their hair loss, I always say that actually losing it was far worse than now having lost it, because it's just that horrible panic of not being able to control it, which absolutely was the worst. Like that's the most horrendous part. And then once it had all gone, you couldn't get balder than how I was. I'd literally lost everything. My facial hair and body hair followed. I would say the following month, I would wash my face and then my eyelashes would come away as I washed my face, my eyebrow hair. I lost my mustache, which was probably a good thing. But nose hair, I lost nose hair, all body hair. I remember that I'd shaved my armpits and then I just didn't need to shave them again. Literally, it was like months later and I was like, I hadn't shaved for a really long time. And I had no hair, nothing came back. It was just surreal. And yeah, just weird. The first year was the weirdest, absolute weirdest. And I was quite desperate to solve it to start with, lotions or potions or nettle soap rubbed on my head and dancing naked under a full moon. If somebody had said do it, I would have done it. And was probably slightly after the first year that I just fell more into the acceptance. And then once I was into the acceptance, I think you just stop trying to look for the solution. And that, again, that's part of the stress, I think, personally, is the control and trying to solve it and trying to make it better. Which, you know, it's your body. You just can't make your body comply because it's just doing its own thing. So
I'm trying to keep up with these amazing nuggets that you're saying. There's just so much in here. Your doctor, was it a general doctor that you went to?
yeah, like a GP, and he was just, he obviously has seen it a lot before. I don't think he was expecting to see me lose hair quite so fast. I think obviously alopecia comes in many forms. And from what I hear, some people lose it super fast and some people lose it. It's like a year thing where it fades through and you sin and it goes like that. So I think that I was a slight anomaly because it fell so fast. And so I think that he was genuinely quite gobsmacked, but just, he didn't know what to do because there's nothing technically they can do. I mean, he checked my bloods. I wasn't dying. He had done his job type of thing. So, and then it was like, I'll refer you to a dermatologist. And, you know, they also couldn't really do anything.
So he said the words that you quoted, "You are not a priority. Don't squeeze yourself in," after you first went to see him.
Yeah. He gave me a printout on alopecia areata, which is the kind of circular patch that you see. And yeah, it stayed with me because he was very like, this is very, don't panic over this. And it says on the printout as well, worrying may increase the hair loss, which
Oh
obviously
my
at that
God.
point you're panicking about it anyway. And then the stress inside your body of this panic over it. Do you know what I mean? It's not helping the situation, but it's very hard to stay calm, I think, in a situation like that when actually you're just, it's all new territory. It hadn't happened before. It felt like it shouldn't happen. And yeah, and nobody was immediately saying, it's like, you're not dying. Here's a lovely wig. I didn't even think about that. So it was just panic.
I know doctors are very logical and they're doing their jobs and all that, but that hurts me to hear that. You are not a priority. Like, I was like, I'm annoyed at that, how that this doctor could say that.
It's because it isn't deemed life-threatening. I think that's why there's so little research that's gone into it on the whole as well, because it's not like you're a diabetic. Diabetic, I think, is autoimmune as well, but that can be life-threatening versus other things. This is hair is way more than just hair. I have to say that, but then people always look at it and say, oh, it is just hair. And you're like, it's very hard for somebody to actually appreciate how it does impact every part of your life, every day. If I get a cold, I have no nose hair, and the hazard of having a cold is that snot will just whiz out of your nose.
Really?
And then it happens. Yeah, I call it like condensation. It's almost like nose condensation, and you can't control it until it's almost out. And then you get like a nose drip, and it's just the weirdest thing again. And no eyelashes mean that you're constantly I wear contact lenses. I'm constantly getting like debris in my eye. I get swollen eyes. Hay fever really bothers me because everything's just coming right up in me. And it's all little things like that, but you know, your body isn't doing the function it should do. So apart from the vanity side of things, yeah, the hair isn't there to serve and protect you. If I go running, sweat will just run from my head through my fake eyebrows straight into my eye. There's no barrier. It doesn't. Your eyebrows are supposed to feel the water onto either side, and it can't because they aren't there. Things like that. People, I think, at first when they say it's only hair, they don't really consider.
Yeah, these are definitely things that myself and meant like nose hair. I always thought, what's the point of nose hair? I take it for granted. I didn't know that when you have a cold and
Yeah.
you don't have nose hairs, you need it.
Yeah, it's just when it's not there, you miss it. I think the weirdest thing for me now is that 5.5 years on, I now get, and I have no idea why, I now get armpit hair I get big toe hair, and I get a little bit of leg hair, only in some places. I don't know, there's no rhyme or reason, but I can't grow eyelashes or eyebrows, which would be of some use. But my big toe hair on one foot in particular is a really strong grower.
I'll definitely touch upon it later. I still want to go in a bit more about that first year or so. But I just want to say your energy and your mood, you giggle and you laugh and you talk about big toe hair and that no one would talk about, I'm sure. And I can really see you are far beyond acceptance and you seem to be at peace. And Nirvana, if you know the band, but also the spiritual term, it's really cool to see that. You look like you look happier than a lot of people I know.
Sorry, Fred's trying to get in on it.
Can we see Fred? Can we say hi to Fred? Who's Fred? For those who are listening on the podcast.
Fred is my Coton d'Atulia, who is 6 years old. We got him when I was pregnant with my youngest daughter, so they're like best mates. But anytime I'm on a call, he gets a bit of FOMO and wants to be involved. I'll let him sit on my lap as long as he doesn't start barking. We're all good.
So,
but yes. Do you want me to go back to the first year?
Yeah, I want to hear. So I just want to confirm. So it was after your third daughter, you found the first patch. And
yes.
And did you ever, in any of your pregnancies, did you ever experience postpartum depression?
No, I found being pregnant in all pregnancies difficult. I found that it physically slowed me down, which I found quite frustrating. I didn't enjoy pregnancy. Some people glow and they find it amazing. I hated the fact that I couldn't put my shoes on properly. I found it wildly frustrating. I felt that I tired much quicker. All of these are perfectly natural things when you're pregnant, but just I found it wildly frustrating through all of it. And I also, 3 girls, had sickness with every single one, only for the first few months, but just, like I had friends who glowed and thoroughly enjoyed pregnancy, whereas I was just like, no, I'm pretty much done with it. Fast forward the 9 months, but with my second, I was anemic with her. She was the biggest baby as well, actually, and just really took it out of me, I think. And so I did find a couple of patches with her where I was anemic. My iron levels have always been quite low anyway. But it was actually cool to the point where they said you need to have some medications that help you with that.
Got it. And I loved what you said. Losing it is far worse than having lost it.
Yeah, it's the lack of control, because you know that it shouldn't happen. Technically, it shouldn't happen. We have hair for reasons, and because another thing, actually, I struggle to regulate my body temperature. In general, I'm either freezing cold or boiling hot, and I really struggle with going from hot to cold and stuff as well, just because I don't have enough hair on me to deal with that and regulate it for me, which is another weird thing. But definitely when your hair is falling, all you think about is the fact that your hair is falling out. It's horrible. It's really horrible, and you're given that reminder because it physically is coming out from you. And I was blonde. My hair, I used to bleach within an inch of its life, and which I've always done. So I can't imagine that impacts it to any level. But I would see the hair on my hands, but obviously they were very fine and very pale, so it wasn't wildly showing up. Whereas I would imagine if your hair was darker, you'd see it everywhere. But it's that panic, and you just can't stop it. And I panic bought lotions and potions and hair growth serums and sprays and shampoos, anything that said it was like, I think I even tried like minoxidil, I think it's called, the kind of Rogaine types, the hardcore like stuff that kind of guys use as well. I was willing to try anything because I was just so desperate, because you can see it just slipping away, and it's that weird, please don't leave me, please stay on my head, but there's nothing you can do. It wants to fall. It literally fell with no pain. So it was already, I don't know too much about hair sonicles, but it was already like on its way out. regardless. It made its journey up, and it was literally just the last bit of it coming away. And that alone, I wouldn't want to relive. And I think actually talking to friends that I've made now that have hair loss in various forms, I think they've all said the same, that actually the losing part is the unbearable bit. It's gone. And I think some of them that have regrown hair and then either lost it again or have the fear of losing it again, that's what they hold. It's that kind of, I can't bear the thought of going through that experience again, which, yeah, the fact that I'm completely bald, again, it's helped with my acceptance. I'm quite content with the fact that I know where I am with it. And an eyelash or two would be nice, but I know where I am, and I can't get smoother, and that's a much more manageable place to be.
So if you were to, you must have bought some IKEA furniture at some point in your life.
Yes, yeah.
With the little wooden pieces that get lost
Yeah.
together and all that. But if we're gonna, if you were to bullet point, because if it was on the IKEA furniture instruction, your journey, like in 5-10 steps, what would that look like? Could you give us the quick bullet points? We're not done yet. We've got a lot more to go through, but I'm just curious at this point. I don't know, I just thought about this.
I think it's just like the finding out is the finding out, and then it is pure panic.
Okay.
You just go into panic mode, and then it's solve it. Please help me solve it. And then once you can't solve it, you move into, oh, I quite like wearing wigs. Like for me, that's how it happened. A wig was a bit of a plaster for me because I could just shove it on. And I always had a thing with my hair where I was always trying to grow it. Like I was always like, I'll cut it short because I like pixies. Oh God, I cut my hair. I want to grow it, and I'll grow it. So I was always really fickle to the point where I wasn't allowed to talk about my hair in work because colleagues would know that I would moan about the fact that I was either growing it or cutting it. And it became a bit of a running joke, to be fair, with them. I think that once you hit the wig discovery, for me personally, that was like a whole massive bullet point in itself, because it became, wow, look at this whole shiny world of nice hair. And whilst it bridged the gap for me in being able to deal with being bald, because I wasn't ready to be bald because it fell so quickly, and I would never have chosen to have shaved my head. I was not that wild. I wasn't that type of girl. I just wanted to blend in. But not being ready to be bald yet, as well as being able to just carry on. And that's what the wig enabled me to do. But then for me, I love fancy dress. I love dress up, any excuse. I love a festival. And for me, I saw it in that capacity, so that it became quite like, oh, I've got this one, but then I could get this one, and this one will give me a whole new look. And that's how it started for me. And so once I fell more into that, I hit the acceptance point, because I was a bit, actually, this is the silver lining. And friends started to say to me, gosh, I shouldn't tell you that I'm jealous that you can wear all these hair styles and change so often, but I'm actually jealous. And I'd be like, it's good and bad, but the good just became better with each step, really. And I think the acceptance is, for me, the last step, and everything else has just been like a bonus after it, really.
So I'm going to try I think I might have missed one, but the bullet point IKEA furniture instructions on your journey. 1, find it out. You found out you had the hair loss. 2, there was a number 2. I might have missed it. Then I remember there was panic. Was there anything between the panic and the finding out?
I don't think there was anything in between panic, and I think that you find out, aside from going to the doctor, it's like doctors and dermatologists, but you are panicking. It is that panic is the next thing, really.
So find out, then panic, then try to solve with all of the creams. And oh my God, I've heard a lot. I would love to talk more about that. And then 4, I heard, was that the awareness stage or the acceptance stage? And then
I think before I accepted it, 4 was wig discovery.
Wig discovery, yeah. That's right. And then after the wig discovery, did you?
That acceptance.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. So discovering wigs, sound like it helped you reach, because it was a stage before acceptance. Usually it's after. Usually acceptance, I've heard in many stories, it's afterwards. All right, I'll try a wig. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I would agree. I think some people have a very negative interpretation of wigs. And I must be honest, I did, in the fact that you associate them with illness and you associate them with older people, to the point where in my day job career, I've looked after health products quite frequently for these retailers, to the point where years ago, we did some wigs. They were awful wigs, but we did some wigs, and I had hair at the time. And I remember in the office, we were in hysterics because we were all trying them on, and they were very old fashioned styles. And I couldn't have even imagined at that point wanting or needing one other than like a fancy dress wig. We all had this good old giggle about the fact that, look at us and our wigs. One of them we called Badger because it looked like a badger. It literally was that like bristly kind of style. But yeah, and I just didn't see it in any other way. And so I had quite an internal battle. I got the wig because I couldn't wear a woolly hat to my office job. It just, like, we were smart casuals. I didn't have to wear a suit, but do you know what I mean? I just couldn't see a supplier with a bobble hat on. It just wasn't the done thing. And so I felt quite, I can't not have hair. I need to have some hair. And so the wig was very short-term fix, because I actually thought as well that it was going to be a temporary thing. I genuinely thought that my hair would come back quickly as well. And so the acceptance hadn't hit me at that point, because I was like, wig goes on, I'm just going to carry on because I cannot stop because I've got stuff to do. That was my whole attitude. And so the wig was the plaster. And the thing for me as well, because I always moaned about my hair, I did have a very positive attitude towards buying the hair that I liked the look of, because I didn't want to match what I had hair wise. I was like, if I'm paying for hair, then I will get some nice hair that I wanted. I wanted a wavy bob that was long. Yeah, I'll have that. Yeah, because I'm buying it. So my acceptance around that was quite easy to do, because I saw it as a solution. It got me from A to B, and I couldn't stay in the house. I had kids to get, work to do. I couldn't stop. Life didn't stop. I did take a day off. I just carried on.
Wow. So you just got into action, you kept going, and you said, I wasn't in acceptance yet, but I needed to wear something. I needed to have some hair. A bobble hat wasn't working. And you said, I got a wig, and the wig was the plaster, which translation into American English is a Band-Aid. So you put on a plaster, a Band-Aid, and then which was the wig, and then the acceptance came later because you were so busy rushing around. Okay, amazing. And you talked about, before you had hair loss, you worked with some wigs in your company, and people would put them on in the office and joke about it, and the stigmatism behind wigs. I mean, it's unreal, the joking. And that's what happens. And when people see a wig, they want to put it on and have a laugh, right?
Yeah.
And
it's that novelty. It's the novelty of it. It's the same as, obviously I'm single and I've been dating and stuff like that. And it's the same type of analogy as when you're hanging out with your married friends and you have a dating app on your phone. Your married friends are like, oh my God, what a novelty. And they want to have fun on it, when the reality of needing to use it or wanting to use it is like a slightly different thing. But it's the same thing with hair. People who don't wear wigs or have lovely long hair, it's the novelty of, gosh, I'd love to see myself in long blonde hair. Can I try it? I'd love to see myself in such and such. A friend asked if her husband could borrow one of my wigs before, because he had a fancy dress party. And I had to politely say, I'm sure his head's much bigger than mine, so he'll stretch you. And do you realise that's a several £100 wig that I'm not going to just lend him to get beer on? Do you know what I mean? If I'm getting beer on it, it's fine. That is my wig. So yeah, like people just, if you're not in the, if you've no experience, if you've never had a family member who has experienced hair loss through medication or chemo treatment or alopecia, whatever it might be, there's this massive gap where actually people just don't know, they don't appreciate the in-between. And then there's this massive gap of just, once you get into it, like loads of stars wear wigs. You don't damage your hair by going from black to blonde. It's just, there's a whole positive set of uses that I think people slowly are shifting. I think the mindset is slowly shifting, but there is still that slight stigma and the joke aspect, absolutely, that kind of comes.
The joke aspect, some of the English audience might appreciate this. A few years ago, someone showed me a book by an English comedian. I cannot remember his name, but he was a famous old English comedian in the 70s and 80s. And he actually mentioned the Dimples wig shop. The Dimples started, my dad started it, and he had wig shops. And he had a wig shop in Bolton, in North Manchester. And it was next to a cinema, which is now an apartment complex. And in the book, he wrote, "Oh yeah, just like all the other kids," or something like that. "We stole a wig from Dimples next door, and we were playing around with it in the cinema, and someone shoved it behind one of the chairs." It was like actually in the book. And regarding joking, I did so many trade shows, beauty trade shows, where we would have our booth and we were showing our wigs. And I see it as a solution or an option to wear a wig for cancer or alopecia. We're not really we're not really focused on fashion. We have very fashionable items, but there was always every show, there was always 2 or 3 people that would walk past and then suddenly grab one and stick it on the head and laugh with their mates, and it used to bother the hell out of me. So I think that, and I think one more thing that may push people away from, or may seem like, oh, wigs are negative. A lot of people receive wigs, it comes unstyled and
Yeah.
it looks like a wig. So
Yeah.
the term wiggy, the whole point of wearing, we want it to look cool. The way you style is unreal. Like you're parting right now is unbelievable. How you do it, how it sits like that. It does not come out the bag or the box like that. It doesn't. It will look, no matter how, if you spend $20,000 on a wig, and there are wigs that cost that much, it's going to look like a wig when you put it on your head. It's going to look wiggy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, I think the most expensive wig, I won't discuss brands, but the most expensive wig I had was about £6,000 worth.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, fresh out the box, it would look just as wiggy as a £2,000 wig or £1,000 wig or less. It just, wigs, you need to, I think as well, sometimes people receive the wig and they're actually almost afraid of it.
Yeah.
It's like this entity that comes out the box and they are too scared. They're scared they're going to break it because obviously they're not familiar, and they're scared to rough it up a bit, really. And I think that it's really important to make it your own, because I really believe that people should have a positive wig experience, because actually if you've lost your hair for whatever reason, it's traumatic enough. And then if you try a wig because you feel that would help you, and then your wig experience was like really rubbish as well, then it's like a double whammy. You just get very, oh, and this happened and I can't, and it doesn't have to be that way. It really doesn't. Like it can be positive. I hear lots of stories of people wearing the wrong size and they'll say, oh gosh, is it going to blow off because this happened one time? It's somebody pulled it and it slid. Or I don't know. There's some quite extreme stories that you hear, but I think the education side of things is really important. And then once people feel confident in the hairpiece, which is what you should feel, that's when you want to add to your collection. It's like having a tattoo. You're like, gosh, I wouldn't mind a red one this time, and I wouldn't mind a brown one this time. And I feel really passionate about that because my first wig consultation that I had was really positive. And I was taught at that point, I was shown all the different cap styles. I was shown why a cap is more expensive versus a different style of cap. And it really helped me appreciate what I'm looking into, what makes me feel good, what doesn't. And it was actually at my first consultation that the lady said to me, take some photographs, some like selfies of yourself in the hair, in the different styles, so you can get used to seeing yourself because the different hair. And that's the first day that I got the wig was when I started my Instagram that evening, because I started it because I wanted to be open about the wig thing. But actually it was like practice. It helped me come to terms with looking different. And so I would take selfies of myself in the wig. And then it progressed from pictures of me in the wig to pictures of me without hair. when it was a slow process, like I used to use filters to start with because it would ease me in, because I wasn't used to seeing myself completely bald. So it might have a sparkly background just to detract from it. And it took a while, but then it gets to the point where now, as I'm sure you've seen on my Instagram, some days I look like a potato in bed with no hair, no makeup, but it is what it is. And on those days, the messages that I get from women saying, yeah, me too, I look just like that. It's really nice to see somebody on social media showing themselves in that respect, because actually underneath it all, we're all like it. If we've experienced hair loss, that's our natural state. And so I think it's important to show all of the ups and downs.
I've never heard that before. The selfie technique. That was a great tip, because if I'm going to look in the mirror, it's usually like with a critical look on my face. But if I'm going to
Yeah.
take my phone and do I don't do selfies or anything. I think I'd
Well,
probably
I
pose.
didn't before.
But when you do a selfie versus look in the mirror, like, pose and have more fun than looking in the
Yeah.
mirror. So what a
It,
great way to play.
it really helped though, because then as well, I could look back on my phone afterwards and I was like, okay, this was me with this style and this was me with that style. And it massively helped. And it felt unnatural. It felt wildly unnatural to be doing it because I didn't take any selfies. I would take pictures of the kids and maybe me and the kids, but I wouldn't take pictures of just myself when I had hair because I just didn't. And then now my phone is just full of my face, unfortunately. It's usually like work product, kids, dog, and then my face with different hair on. But yeah.
So oh man, there's so much great stuff here. I don't want to forget saying some things what I want to just touch on something that I have noticed by doing a whole bunch of consultations myself. And correct me if I'm wrong here, because we ended on the part of your journey where it's like, oh, this is acceptance. Now it's fun wearing wigs and I'm playing around. It's almost like there's a phase two of the journey that I'm seeing with a lot of women. That's the journey of finding the right type of hair, the right wig, the right topper. I've heard many stories. A couple of women I spoke to recently, they had to buy 8 toppers or 9 toppers from
Oh,
different
wow.
companies till they found the right one. So what I see is part of the journey is finding the hair that works, and you have to test out many, which is unfortunate. It would be great to get it on the first time, maybe with a stylist, or maybe there is a way to get it the first or second time to not have to go through all that anguish of trying to
Yeah.
right color that right piece. Can you relate with that at all?
Yes, I can. I think that after my initial consultation, I think some of the things that were covered in the consultation, but it's one of those that actually you don't know until, if that makes sense. And so now if somebody comes to me and asks about a wig, sometimes people would say, I need to wear a wig. What's the best blonde wig? And that's what they'll ask. And I think that this is where perhaps some shops that I've heard of, certainly in the UK, they might then say, oh, well, this is my most expensive human hair blonde wig, and this is what we're going to push on you. And so then their experience as they come away is that they're not wildly happy with what they've bought, plus they've spent a fortune and they're not feeling it, if you like. And I always like to say to people, what's your lifestyle like? Because it did take a while to find the groove of what I liked versus what I didn't like. And for me, it's less about the fiber because whilst human hair is a wonderful treat and I really do love human hair wigs, I also champion synthetic because I think they're wonderful. And they are certainly when my youngest daughter was a baby still, I didn't have time to fanny about with a human hair wig that needed styling. I needed to shove something on my head so that I got them to school on time and then got them to nursery. And so I really championed a synthetic wig that had waves in already because it just did a job perfectly. And I think with time for me, I found that I leant towards hand-tied caps. Just that's personal preference. I like the fit. I prefer the way that it sits on my head. I prefer the possibilities that you have with that. There's so many more possibilities in styling because you just can move parts around so much more. But equally, everything comes at a price. And so I certainly in the earlier days, I'd gone from like a monopart. That was my kind of first one at X price. And then I discovered a kind of monotop with wefts at the back. And so that was the next kind of price. And yeah, it did take that discovery to go, actually, I don't really like the wefts at the back, or I don't really like this. And to some extent, I've probably had privilege over that because I've seen a lot of wigs, I've tried a lot of wigs on, which has obviously been greatly helpful as well. But I think it does take a little bit to get into your groove, but I think that answering your lifestyle choices to start with certainly would help target the suggestions that perhaps somebody who was selling you the wig, that would help you get there quicker. And I also always say to people when they ask for advice to purchase the most expensive one that you can afford within your budget. If you can afford a hand-tied cap that's human hair, then go for it, because it will last you and you will have such a wonderful experience with it, versus if you budget on your synthetic machine-made cap. Yes, it serves a purpose, but then if you're going to complain that it feels wiggy because it doesn't feel like your hair, that's the thing you've got to weigh up. And I think some people don't want to accept that the wig will always be the wig. For me, like I'll refer to it as my hair. And I don't mind telling people it's a wig at all. I don't mind taking it off, but I will always say hair, my hair, new hair. And I think some people, there's that barrier where it's never going to be their hair. And that's another, I think, emotional thing to just get past. Because sometimes no wig in the world, you could offer them anything spun from gold fibers, but it wouldn't hit the spot because it isn't their hair.
Right.
And that's part of the journey too.
You discussed a lot about really details about wig caps, wefted, hand-tied, monotop, all the mono parts, fully wefted. It's really technical. Really, we're here not to talk about that this time. If there's any questions, please make a comment and we'll let myself, Joe, can get back to you on this. But you did bring it up because we're not here to sell product. We don't want to sell product on this show. We're just here to talk about the journey. But it is part of the journey learning about all this. When we hire a new staff member, it takes ages to really understand what is what, why is this different than this, the benefits of a wefted wig, the benefits of a hand-tied wig, the benefits of a lace front. They all have pros and cons. There's so much to learn. Maybe that's another part of the journey, the education. Do you find that women are struggling with education? Is there enough education out there to help make it easier for decisions?
I don't think people, I think you can say the terms, but I don't think people appreciate why certain things give you certain things. So like what a lace front will give you in terms of realistic hairline, it's getting people to understand those things. I really weirdly took to the information quite easily. And I don't know if it's because I've come from a product background so that I'm used to technical products. I don't know if that's it, but just it all made perfect sense to me. And so I just, in my head, and I kind of line them up because I know that it all comes to cost. It's a cost thing, isn't it? Whereas a basic versus a hand-tied, it sits with affordability, really. And I don't know that people relate it to that. I think, again, a lot of people will say, oh, it must be a human hair wig. It must be a this, it must be a, I think they have, in some cases, a very preconceived idea in their head of what it looks like and what the best is, rather than it being the best for them. Because there's a running scale, like you say, some wigs are just hugely expensive. There's a running scale of what you can get out there, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's best for that person. So education, I think, is wildly important. Also for caring for it as well, because some people, I mean, I've done it. I've boiled a wig before and absolutely killed it. It was a synthetic wig. I was mucking about with it in the early days, boiled it. It came out looking like a rat. But I learned my lesson and it went in the bin. And I think it's pushing the boundaries of knowing what you can and can't do. And now I would never do that because I've learned. But it's just that getting it across, I think, is important.
There is a lot of misinformation out there on caring for wigs and toppers. Just
Yeah.
beware of where you get your information from. I was a sucker for some misinformation on a guitar, how to get a sticker off a guitar, and I ruined one of my guitars. I'm so annoyed. And I looked at it and it looked reputable, and it jumped this thing I wanted to do with the guitar. It was right at the top of Google when I said, how do you get rid of a sticker? So I thought, oh, good, this must be good. No, not necessarily. So yeah, it's really, there's a lot of information out there that's good, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. I mean, we could talk for hours and hours on what not to do, what to do. I was at a salon that we supply to in the Midwest, and the customer showed, oh yeah, thanks, you're brighter now. The
I
customer,
better.
yeah, you're 8 hours, we got time difference. He showed me the wig, and I was like, ooh, I was like in the inside of the cap, and I was like, that looks like one of mine, but what happened to it? Like, what? I don't get it. It's like now the cap's kind of all white and faded, and it used to be like a brownish purple color the inside of the cap because it was a brunette. And he said the young lady put it in bleach,
Oh
or
my
was
God.
it bleach or something really toxic? Apparently, it was a misinformation online to get rid of knots. You
Oh
know,
God.
yeah. We asked the questions. How does she wear the wig? She drives a convertible all the time, driving fast with her, wearing
Yeah,
her
yeah,
wig. I'm like,
yeah.
not great for knots. Anyway, so a lot of misinformation out there. So I wanted to ask you about, we would talk about, when was it in your journey when you started to get really open about your hair loss? Was there any, because I've heard this term a lot, hiding? Was there any, I'm not going to show anyone right now, because you're very open and vocal. You help so many women, so many. You got to give yourself 1,000 pats on the back for the vulnerability and the courage that you show and talk about on all of your channels. When was it? When was that shift and that turning point where you, or was there a shift, or were you always open?
I was always open. I was open from the start because I felt my opinion on it was, because my hair was, it was shortish when it fell, like a grown out pixie. And because I had the attitude of buying the hair that I wanted, so I went longer to about here. I didn't want it. For me, it was an obvious, not everybody's observant, but for me, it was an obvious change. And I didn't want to be talked about. I felt it was a conversation that it was something that had happened to me. I had no control over it. And so actually, and I didn't want people to think I was unwell and that it was a kind of, I was having chemo or something like that, especially with the kids, because I think my daughters, I didn't want them to think that I was unwell. I didn't want people to speculate, talk around them. Is your mum okay? And so I was just super open from the start, and my colleagues and stuff knew, my friends knew. And so the day that I got the wig, I started the Instagram page and it was open. And I don't use Facebook anymore, but I'd put it on my personal Facebook and I'd said, this has happened to me. I'm not going to really talk about it here, but if you do want to know more, or if you are interested or whatever, you can feel free to follow this or dab into this or have a look, whatever it is you want. And I was happy to talk about it from the start because I just couldn't. I'm like a kid. I can keep a secret, but I can't keep stuff like that under my hat. Like it's part of who I was. It's part of who I am. And so the only hiding that I did was I tried not to cry in front of the kids too much because I was devastated. I would cry a lot and I would cry having the conversation with people. Certainly for the first few months, I cried a lot about it. I would cry at work. If somebody talked to me I'd find the funny side. I always used humor to cope. But I would cry in your face. But I felt by being open, and certainly the response from everybody was just overwhelmingly supportive and lovely. And I couldn't have asked for a better response. It was just, I wasn't expected people to sympathize on me. I wasn't looking for that. I was just looking for people to say, oh, okay, cool. And it's the same with, if you tell kids, my girls, over the years, I've had lots of friends over. They all know that I take my hair off. And if they didn't know, I would say, you do know that my hair comes off, don't you? And they'd be like, okay, cool. And then they just carry on playing. You know, they literally, once you've explained, it is what it is. And so that certainly helped me manage, I think. It was, I didn't feel talked about. I felt that me being quite vulnerable with it was possibly helped other people. I certainly met others in the same boat quite quickly as well through social media, which also helped me. So yeah, from the start, but I would say showing myself with a bald head, that came in slightly after. So that was slightly slower because that was a learning curve for me. Certainly the first few times I'd clock myself in the mirror, I would just be a bit like, whoa, I didn't recognize myself. It was a bit of a shock. And so then, and like I said, I would use the kind of soft filters to start with on the bald head, just to ease myself in with seeing myself represented in a picture. But with time, I would share that too. And with time that came, and in turn, I was meeting more people that had the same. So it was a slightly more gradual thing there. But again, it was all positive. I don't regret any of it. I really don't. Because I also fell, once I had the wig, I think I got my second wig maybe a month after my first wig. So I fell quite quickly into this thirst for new hair. The novelty and the thirst was there. And I was like, okay, I really like this. I'd like to try something different now. And I didn't ever want to feel questioned or ashamed for choosing to swap my style so regularly. Because if I've been dealt this card of baldness, then I will wear any hair that I choose because that's my choice and I enjoy it and no one's going to stop that. But it is what it is. And it is the silver lining. It's the small pleasure that you can take from the downside. And again, some people will say to me, I wear the same wig to the same job every single day. I have 8 of the same wigs. They're on like a rolling rotor where I wash them, wear them. And I can't think of anything worse than living in that. I know it's a choice, but it's just living in that monotony of having the same it's like a prison. And I didn't ever want that because for me, a hair it's an accessory now. It's an extension of my outfit choice or my evening where I'm going. And yeah, I enjoy it to the maximum. Always super open.
Hair is an extension of my outfit choice.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I love that.
So it's weird because if I had hair, I would just have to lump it. But not having hair means that certain hair goes with certain outfits. And I don't know how to describe it. It's the weirdest thing. But hang on, I'm just going to have to yell at my dog. Hang on.
No problem.
Brad! Sorry.
That was brilliant. I think we might keep that in the video.
Me yelling at Fred.
That was brilliant.
He's small but so loud.
We've got one of those too. He's a bit bitey as well, ours too.
Yeah, not just some days I'm like, Fred, seriously, give it up.
So on our call we had a few days ago when I asked you, hey, we'd love to interview you, we just got jamming. We were just talking and 30 minutes. It was so good. And I said, oh, I've got to remember that one. And you just were going on. You said, oh, there's 4 types. You know, I think you were talking about women with hair loss, like different types.
Oh, yeah,
do you remember that? Could you? I was like, oh, please say that again. Can you? It was really funny and fun. And you had this because you speak to so many women. And tell me, what were the 4 types?
4 types. Let me see if I can remember. You get the completely open type.
Right.
Completely open, oversharer, a bit like me, perfectly happy to go with whatever. You get the total incognito, not willing to, it's like the other end of the spectrum, really. They're not willing to disclose the fact that they wear hair. They have to have the same style. They won't let anybody see them without hair. It's that kind of really extreme. I know somebody who she has never let her husband see her without hair. Gosh, I can't imagine living like that. But again, each to their own. But I just feel I'd sooner boot them out than them not accept me without hair. But anyway, there's a whole nother story. I think you also get there's some women who they choose not to wear hair. And I think that comes down to if they've lost their hair, they're very, this is me. And I always say all power to them because I couldn't be that extreme without hair because I just love the hair. But all power to them. Very wouldn't wear hair. It's not right for them. They don't feel comfortable in it. So that's the kind of, I always say that's like super brave for me. I find it, and they wouldn't call themselves brave, but I think that's really wonderful to just be completely content like that. I'm content, but I like wearing hair content. I'll go to the gym without hair, but do you know what I mean? I'm a hybrid, I'd say.
And is there a fourth one, or is that?
Can't remember if there is. We might have to add it back in later if I come to the end of this and I remember. Yeah, I don't know that I can remember. Can you remember?
I can't remember. I've heard that before. There are lots of women, there's lots of people out there, and their partner doesn't know they're wearing hair.
It's
And
mental.
there's men and women. I've heard this for so many years. I've been in this business. So the 4 types, but we came with 3. It's 3 types of, and I just want to say, yeah, there's many people that have hair loss and they wear alternative hair. They wear hair toppers, wigs, extensions, whatever it is, and their partner has no idea about that. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's maybe that's the 4th type. No, there was a 3rd type. You said the same wig, the same color. And I've talked to many women and I've heard them say, I just want to look like me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to be
want
me.
to blend in. It's just that recognizable. It's the comfort zone. It's the comfort zone. And do you know what? I think actually this sits quite nicely with, I think it's when, not all the time, but often if it's been a gradual process, the losing the hair has been slow, so it really thinned. I think because that's a kind of really horrible situation to be in, I think often that's when you really want to clutch on to what you were. So you're sitting in that, I just want to look the same without the balding, wherever it might be. And so the piece covers that.
There's also, I've come across, there's toppers and there's wigs. Toppers are the small bases that go on top, and I call them top extensions, like extensions that go on top. They're very popular these days. I've come across like a lot of salons asking me for this, and women as well, consumers. They've got a little bit of hair at the back here, and they still want to wear a topper. And then we don't do them anymore. We used to make custom made. They would need a really technical custom made topper that was like 9 by 10, 9 inches wide by 10. I don't know in centimeters anymore. 9, but basically all the way back to here, just because they really wanted to have their bio hair, their own hair coming out. They wanted to use that bio hair, and it was so important. And I can't relate. I know but I was thinking, so much easier just to wear a wig. Just to wear a wig, because how's that going to stay on? But that was the choice, and many women rock those very large toppers, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're very expensive, they're custom made, but yeah,
I think there's something though with, if your hair loss again is partial, I don't know, because I did it to some extent in the fact that I lost all my hair really fast, but mine was like, I'd say when I went to the doctor, it was 98% gone, because I had a crazy hairline, really fine, fuzzy hairline. And I didn't shave it off. Like, I actually couldn't bring myself to shave it off, because it was almost like the hope of this kind of like the tiniest bit that was there. And you clutch onto that really because you want it to be real. I think you just naturally, you want to hold on to those last bits just because they're part of what your hair is. It's part of you. And I think actually it's a really big deal to shave your head. However, actually gives a lot of freedom.
If there's 3 things you could tell somebody new to hair loss, 3 tips, what would it be?
The first tip is the reassurance of however horrendous you feel, you won't feel that way forever. Like, it genuinely will get better, which actually you don't want to hear at that point, because people used to say that to me and I'd be like, oh, go away. I don't want to know that. But it genuinely will. And actually feeling better from the inside out helps tremendously. So it will come. I think the second one is know your head size, measure your head, know where you're at head size, because it's wildly important for fit if you choose to wear hair. So it's just a really important factor, because hundreds of people have no idea, thousands of people have no idea of their head size. I had no idea. And I think once you know where you sit, it gives you an insight into what you could start looking for. And I think the third is actually don't rush yourself. If don't feel that you have to be okay with it earlier than you are. Everybody deals with it in their own way, and they deal with it in their own pace as well. I think the only thing I would say is, if support's offered, go towards the support, look for support, because there are some really wonderful places that you can actually meet people that have experienced the same thing, or professionals that might be able to offer some kind of mental support. I think mental health support is really important, because as well as it being a physical, visual thing, I think the stuff that goes on inside your head in dealing with it, that's a really good place to start as well, for some comfort, for sure.
Jo, unbelievable. Hashtag Baldmothertucker, always with a smile, always a great energy behind everything. Thank you so much. We're going to share in the show notes how people can find you, how people can follow you. And there's amazing education that Jo gives on wigs and how to style. You've been amazing showing us your journey, telling us about your journey. We love speaking to you, and we hope to do this again soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Nice to see you guys.
To get the show notes with all the resources discussed, go to dimpleshair.com and sign up for our newsletter. And don't forget to like and subscribe.